So one of the things that I'm going to ask that is real different than a lot of other trainings is that for the period that you're in the room, engaging at your table and or with me, phones face down, don't let it distract you. You're here for a reason today. Now, there are exceptions to this, and I give a lot of leeway for exceptions that are outside of work. So if you have a sick child or relative or friend and you need to keep an eye on it, do that. Don't get caught up in, oh, somebody just sent me an email, let me just really quick. No, don't do that. There have been lots of studies that indicate that when you do that, you've checked out for a good amount of time. So don't do that, okay? Is that fair? All right. The other thing that I ask is that you are interactive, because I really don't want to stand here and talk all day. I get really tired of hearing myself talk, and by the end of the day, you would be really tired of that as well. So engage. Let's have discussions throughout the day. If you're an introvert, let me give you a little clue. At various points throughout the day, just say something, and that way I won't be required to call on you later in the day, because I want to make sure that everybody, because if I want everybody to contribute. So if later in the day there are people who haven't said anything, I will just start to say, Ran, I haven't heard from you today, would you share? And because he's so shy, I would have to draw this out of him. So just those who are introverts, you've been warned. Those of you who are extroverts, it'll be fine. We'll just have discussions. So please do be interactive. What other ground rules are important to you all as we move throughout today? This is an interactive part, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you.
Be direct.
Yeah, be direct. That's incredibly important. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes, how important it is to be clear.
There may be things that are shared that people don't want shared outside the room?
Yes. So there are two components to that. One is vulnerability, and one is confidentiality. Vulnerability, let's talk about that first, because that's a little bit deeper. We're going to be asking you to do some things that may not be comfortable. Our goal is not to embarrass or to put you on the spot. Our goal is for everybody to try what we're teaching here. It may be something you do every day or something you've never done, but I want for you to be comfortable being vulnerable about the situation and your experience here. That's the kind of thing, of course, we don't want shared back. We don't want to say, oh, you know what, Rich didn't do this coaching thing very well. I don't know what's up with that. So no, Rich is going to do a beautiful job at this. But we want to make sure that there's no conversation about that. Similarly, at each table and in the room, you're likely going to be talking about things that are fairly sensitive, because throughout the day we're going to be talking about real world challenges, either work or external to work. I want to make sure that none of that pops up later, and that there aren't conversations about, oh, did you hear about, Jan's boss? They're awful. Did you hear? No, none of that. Yeah?
Her boss is great.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, that was she didn't tell me that earlier or anything. So, no. So, confidentiality, double confidentiality on that. Is that agreed? Can we all hold to that?
Yes.
All right. What else is important to you today? Yes.
Allowance for stupid questions, stupid quotes?
There are no stupid questions, and I'm really glad. I mean, we'll see by the end of the day. But no, it's really important. If you don't know something, if you don't understand, ask. Because what I don't want to have happen is we're going to build throughout the day, and if you've missed one of the components, even if it's a small piece, I don't want you to feel lost later in the day. So we have a couple of options for you. My preference is just shout out your question. Some people like to raise a hand, do that, that's fine. I feel a little like a teacher, and that's okay, but I'd rather just have you ask a question. If you're not comfortable with that, on the back there is a board that says most helpful, least helpful questions and suggestions. If you have a question, stick it up there. Throughout the day, I check that. I also want to invite you, when I say stick it up there, what I mean is there are sticky pads here. If there is anything you'd like to contribute throughout the day, please do so back there on that board. And then at the end of the day, I'm going to ask you all for more formal feedback, meaning I'm going to ask everybody to post at least one thing. But please do throughout the day if there are questions, and if you're embarrassed to ask, write it down and put it up there. So, why are we here? What have you heard about this, first of all? Let me start with that. What have you heard about the program? Because I know there's word on the street. There's always word on the street. Yeah?
That's exciting.
Excited?
Sold $1 million worth to a client. It's
Sold $1
very
million
exciting.
worth?
Really
Okay.
excited.
Yeah? People buy this stuff. It's great. What else have you heard?
That in a very short amount of time, you can make a big impact by influencing each individual.
Yes. Yeah. it's about shifting by plugging into each individual and getting them to learn, rather than we're going to change the culture and we're just going to apply it to everybody. No, we're going to apply it to every person at this table, and then when they go back, they're going to apply it to all the people around them, and pretty soon people are asking for the type of feedback that we're training you on here today. There are a couple of things I want to highlight. Clearly hear about personal growth. To your point, this is at the micro level. We're working with you independently to make sure that you understand, feel comfortable with, and exhibit all these behaviors. It will help you in all areas of your life. We're going to talk about a bit later more about that, but it's important to recognize that all these skills are applicable everywhere. This isn't just about here at CCL. You're going to have better conversations at home. I will share that one of the clients that we've presented this for, I was there about a month and a half ago, and I was in the elevator riding down at the end of the day, packed elevator, and for the back of the elevator I heard, "You're the Better Conversations guy," and I turned around, and it was somebody who'd been in one of the earlier classes. I couldn't even tell you where. He followed me out and spent about 20 minutes or so telling me how this has transformed his life. Not just his work engagements, but with his wife, with his children, with his in-laws, with all the people in his social circles. He now is having more robust conversations that matter. There was a real emotive quality to it. He was really moved by how it impacted him. I share that because I hear that every single time I go back to that organization, the one where I've done 31 of them. Invariably, somebody stops me in the hall and says, "Oh, I did that thing." And they say what it is, and it worked. It's like, yeah, it actually does work. So this is about you and your learning. Some of this you're going to know, but when you layer it all together, it might be different. It's also about supporting campus culture. We want to make sure that as an organization, there is and I will use the term probably only once today, but coaching culture here that invites feedback. It's amazing to me that, and this is not just CCL, but an organization that focuses on learning, development, et cetera, there are still times where you struggle with communication. We're going to help you with that today and make sure that as an organization, we're supporting that culture. There are also some coaches in the room who are going to be delivering this later in the week. They need to experience it today as an observer, as a participant, so that they know what it should feel like, so they can be better coaches throughout. Better Conversations will help you by making the best possible place to work because you spend so much time here. You spend most of your waking hours here. Why not make it a better place to work? You're also going to become more effective in every area of your life, everything you can think of. If you're not aware of your strengths and your weaknesses, you could be doing things that are hindering you, or you could be not replicating the things that are working well. But when people are giving you feedback to say, you know, Cassandra, this went really well. What you did in the meeting earlier, this specific thing worked really well, you then know to file that away as something that works. All right? Better teams at home, outside of work, parenting techniques. I use this with my 15-year-old son, who I will use as an example throughout the day, much to his annoyance. I'll be able to tell him it's filmed now, so that will really that's exciting. I can't wait to tell him this. So, page 2 of your learning magazine. So let's talk about real world, how this applies. I think you can probably see this. What do you see up here? Teeth. What else?
Food on teeth.
Food on teeth. Who is this? Don't be the first group that's missed this. Who is this? Someone famous.
Pink.
If you already know, then don't shout it out.
Pink.
Not Pink, but you're close. I'm sorry? Katy Perry. Did you already know that?
From the nose.
The nose ring, yeah. So there's a reason that I show this picture. This, by the way, this is not just food, this is quinoa. That's important to the story here. So this was the iHeart Music Awards. And here's what happened is just before arriving, she had a lovely quinoa salad to sustain her through the evening. She then walked the red carpet, like this. She sat in the audience and was filmed. She performed on stage. She met with press afterwards, and she went to an after event. So that was probably 7 hours, maybe. She, at the end of the night, picked up her phone, and what was trending? Pictures of her with food in her teeth. She immediately tweeted, "Now taking applications for real friends who will tell me when I have quinoa in my teeth," which is a brilliant response. I think this is an incredibly poignant story about why feedback is so important. At any point during the evening, anybody, probably hundreds of people engaged her could have just said, oh, Katie, got a little something right there. She would have been fine, and it would have moved on from there. But now she's living with this idea that I've just spent 6 hours on film with food in my teeth, and nobody told me. How infuriating that must have been. And she took it in jest, clearly. But the message is, if we're not telling people what they're doing well and not, they're just going to continue to do it. In organizations, how many times have you engaged somebody and thought, in a meeting or elsewhere, and thought, well, that didn't go well. But, you know, maybe their boss will tell them, or maybe somebody closer to them, they'll tell them. Angela knows them better. Maybe Angela will tell her. Don't do that. That's part of this coaching culture, the feedback culture that we want to make sure we're creating here, is when you see something, I almost said when you see something, say something.
That sounds
That too, and I'm not a representative of TSA, but that's a really good motto for when you see something going well or not going well, say something about it. Let the person know. Okay? Is that clear? All right. Misconceptions. On page 3, there's just a little place for you to scribble. What I want you to do is draw an arrow pointing straight down. Got it? Biggest misconception about feedback. It comes from top down. My boss gives me feedback. That's how feedback should be given. That's actually not the culture that we want to create here. Now create arrows up and down, arrows side to side. I always love to see how people do it differently. So the idea is feedback should be coming from all directions now. By the time you leave here today, my hope is that you're going to be comfortable giving feedback in all directions. So when you see your boss doing something that's working or not, you're able to say, hey boss, here's what I observed, and here was the impact on me. Peers, spouses, people you just know but aren't engaged with here at work, share all directions. That's the way it works. That's the way agile organizations are created. Organizations that are top-down only are archaic. Feedback has to come from all directions. So I'm going to challenge you throughout the day to make sure that you are giving feedback to everybody all around you. It's really easy to give feedback to your kids, less so to your spouse, probably even less so to your parents. Depends on how your relationship is. But there's something about the hierarchic nature of that makes it challenging. So avoid that. We're going to move past that today. So take a moment, do not say this aloud, but what words come to mind when you think about feedback or coaching? Just think for 1 second. What your experience has been with feedback and coaching, how you give feedback and coaching, just what are the words that come to mind? And then what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm sure you've done this before, having been at CCL, there are Visual Explorer cards at the back. I'd like you to silently go back, select a card that you feel encapsulates your experience with or how you give feedback and coaching. And then come back to your table and discuss.